Now, today we are starting off our visits with a live guest. We have visiting with us Kelly Derricks, who is the president and co-founder of C.O.V.V.H.A. I think I'm saying it right. The Children of Vietnam Veterans Health Alliance. You may or may not be aware, and if this is your first time to hear about it, Kelly's going to bring you a lot of good information, but please keep checking into it. But you may or may not be aware that there are many children here in the United States and globally who suffer with severe health issues because they had a parent who was exposed to Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. Now, Ms. Derricks is here to get us all acquainted with what is happening to treat these individuals, where we can go to find more information, what we can do to stay advised, how we can help, and much more. So, Kelly, first thing, we want to welcome you to Stardust Radio Network and the United We Roll show and say thank you for taking time to visit with us.
Thank you, Judy, so much for having me. It's really an honor that you've invited me to be on United We Roll. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Kelly, I've been following C.O.V.V.H.A. and this whole situation for quite some time. You clearly have been in the midst of developing informational sites and so on. You've been doing so much with it. Tell us how you got involved. Were you a victim of one of these illnesses, and how did you get involved and get this going?
Well, Judy, thanks for asking. First thing I want to say is I choose not to use the word victim. I choose to use the word survivor. I am surviving 32 different illnesses, presumptively from the exposure of my father's service in Vietnam, where he directly handled Agent Orange for 2 tours. He was a loadmaster sergeant in the United States Air Force. Now, what happens is the Vietnam veteran is the first generation of exposed, and you don't pass on Agent Orange. What you do is you conceive a child, you pass on sperm that has become mutated from what is the most deadly part of Agent Orange is dioxin. So when the child is conceived, it's actually a DNA mutation that we're born with that can cause any number of illnesses, none too small and none too large.
Kelly, when I first moved up to West St. Louis County, there was what was a very small bedroom community, Times Beach, and it had to be totally evacuated, totally locked down, chain gates, barbed wire at the top, because of the dioxin content there. So many people who had been in that neighborhood had contracted cancer and some very life-threatening illnesses. A lot of them did not survive.
That is one of the things that when you say Agent Orange, a lot of people only associate it with the Vietnam War. However, the United States government not only tested it all through the United States, but also stored it throughout the United States. So we are looking at situations like Times Beach and Love Canal in upstate New York, or what was recently settled with Monsanto in West Virginia, Nitro, West Virginia, or Anniston, Alabama. I mean, we call them Superfund sites, but these are all over the United States.
I've read about that. Now, I also read that, and yet I have not been able to get an explanation for this, but that a lot of parking lots, when they were resurfaced, dioxin was one of the contents in the resurfacing materials. Now, this was mostly in the Missouri area when I was there that I heard about it, but are you familiar with any of that?
First, let me just say that dioxin occurs in our ground and in our soil and in our land regardless. It's the companies and manufacturers that are not responsible with, manufacturing things like plastics and bleached paper products. So it's always going to get into the soil depending on what the content is or how far down. Resurfacing materials can occur that way. There's also, one of the ways that dioxin has been remedied thus far is only by cement. We have some new remediations going on in Da Nang in Vietnam, which is one of the 28 hotspots that Agent Orange dioxin is still a huge problem. So that's a very complicated process, but underground dioxin is present.
I have to think about, even though I was fairly young at the time, I remember sitting in front of the TV and seeing the spraying of Agent Orange. That covered, if I'm not mistaken, quite a lot of territory during the Vietnam War. So does that mean there's a lot of land that still carries the dioxin that is still a threat to the people?
Absolutely. Vietnam is a country that has been devastated. I mean, we're talking about a chemical that's second only to radioactive waste in its deadliness that was, sprayed all over Vietnam, and they're going into their fourth generation, probably fifth, of birth defects. I've heard that if you stand on any one of the 28 hotspots, obviously some are stronger in dioxin content, for 3 hours, you will feel sick for 3 days. Now, my business partner for C.O.V.V.H.A, Heather Bowser, has traveled to Vietnam 3 times, and she has stood on Da Nang Air Base where her father served.
Oh, my gosh. And did she have that feeling of being sick afterwards?
Yeah, I do recall her telling me that in one of our just personal discussions, that you do start, it's not anything that, you're going to start throwing up immediately, but there is a noticeable change in your body. It obviously, in that type of aspect, it'll go away once you're off the ground that, you really shouldn't be standing on, but until this day, it's really only scientists and people who, are active in this community trying to find remediation.
Absolutely. And what kind of illnesses occur, and who in the family is affected? The veteran comes home, he's been exposed to the Agent Orange, it is now in his system. Who is it that he touches in his family that now picks up the illness?
Well, Agent Orange is not transferred by touch. It is transferred usually by the conception of a child. So in the veteran, Agent Orange dioxin actually stores itself in the fatty tissue. So when a child like myself or Heather is conceived, the genetic mutation is what occurs in our body. Now, that's not to say that in our research we have found several wives or widows of Vietnam veterans who have reproductive cancers. Now, that's not something that I think we'll be seeing justice for in my lifetime. I don't even know if I'm going to see justice for the children of Vietnam veterans like myself in my lifetime. It's something that we have to keep fighting for. But breastfed babies also seem to show more illnesses than a child of a Vietnam veteran who was not breastfed. At that same token, a breastfed child will also, in the wife or widow of a Vietnam veteran, will also show breast cancer. Sometimes, not saying all the time.
And what about miscarriages? Are there miscarriages documented?
Yes. Miscarriages not only are common within the wife of a Vietnam veteran, also stillbirths, also the second generation, the children of the Vietnam vet. Miscarriages or the inability to conceive is one of our highest reported illnesses. Now, please understand that our government only covers spina bifida in the children of male Vietnam veterans. However, in the children of female Vietnam veterans, there are 18-plus birth defects that the VA will cover. And on the VA's website, if you read the small print, it says basically if you were a woman and you stepped foot in Vietnam from this time to this time and you have given birth to a child with said birth defects, we will cover you. However, we will not attribute it to herbicide exposure. So how does that make any sense?
So what do they just choose another category to charge it off to? That's ridiculous.
Well, they don't really choose anything. They're basically saying if you're a woman and you step foot in Vietnam, here you go. So what C.O.V.H.A is working on, first and foremost, is getting those 18-plus birth defects approved for the children of male Vietnam veterans. They are such things as spina bifida, hip dysplasia, cleft palate.
And are now you said the spina bifida primarily shows up in males. Is that what I heard?
The spina bifida is the only illness that the VA covers in the children of male Vietnam veterans. I believe there are 3 types of spina bifida. The most common is spina bifida occulta, and not even that is covered.
Now, and I'm asking you to explain how minds work, so that's definitely not a good question, but I'm trying to figure out how it is that these persons in these positions can pick and choose and say, okay, well, we'll do this one spina bifida for males and let everything else slide. It's clearly there are many health issues that are involved. You have quite a list, don't you?
Yes, I do. I live with kidney failure, actually. However, it's such commonplace for me to live with kidney failure that it doesn't really bother me, so to speak. One of the common threads we've noted are endocrine disorders, and I actually have 2 of them. Severe endocrine disorders that are basically as life-threatening as cancers. And these come up time and time and time again in our databases, first, second generation. However, we're also tracking the 3rd generation, the grandchildren of Vietnam veterans. And the highest reported illness in grandchildren is actually autism.
Wow. As you know, I'm trying to relate the different illnesses because it seems like a lot of these materials at the beginning are agents that would definitely affect the nervous system. Mm-hmm. But for you to have to go through kidney failure now, heaven forbid, you have not had to have a transplant, have you?
Actually, I am denied to have a transplant. Because I have so many illnesses, I will absolutely 100% reject the transplant and the anti-rejection medications. I've also been prevented as of last year from having any more surgeries because I have such a weak heart that the anesthesia from surgeries I don't come out of anymore. So the last time I had surgery, I was told, until I start going to a cardiologist and getting my heart stronger, aside from basically being on a medication that keeps my blood pressure up, that's it, I'm done. And that actually ended up in 3 surgeries that I needed being canceled.
My gosh. And how hard is it, Kelly, to find a doctor who understands what you're saying and who doesn't just say, well, this is all in your head or and take notes and then hand you a prescription?
There was a time when it was very difficult for me, and for the majority of our members, it is very difficult for them. However, because I'm in this advocacy work every day. I was able to assemble an amazing team of doctors that actually help now with the research and anything I bring them and say, here, look at this. What we've done on our website is if you go to C.O.V.V.H.A.net, you'll see the doctor's note in the flyer. Heather and I compiled a doctor's note that we worked on with a couple of my specialists for children of Vietnam veterans to actually print out and bring to their doctors so that they don't have to sit there and say, well, this is the story, and get looked at by their doctors like they have two heads, because that's generally what happens. So it's something that was worked on by medical professionals, and if our members don't have a printer, we are happy to mail them, and at times we've even faxed them ahead of the member's appointment to the doctor's office. It explains everything. The education in the medical field for Agent Orange is not something that is readily available. However, it's a chemical agent. It's a biological agent. And if you say dioxin, the doctors are a little bit more schooled in that area. But it is a huge problem.
I have an extremely rare dysautonomia with a couple of complications. And I noticed on your list that you do have some people with dysautonomia, autoimmune failures and dysfunctions and that sort of thing, which is kind of my cup of tea. But it's wonderful. It is so wonderful for you to have that doctor's slip, because there's nothing worse than walking into a strange doctor's office and trying to tell him how you feel, what's going on, and he looks at you like you said, like you had two heads.
Really?
But to have that note and to show that there is not only medical thought behind the note, but also clearly an organization that is acting professionally and containing collecting information, it just presents a whole different look at the patient when they come through their door. I'm certain that you really make it so much easier for the affected children to be able to go to a doctor.
That's absolutely, something that we're trying to do, and everything that we're doing, we are doing because Heather and I are the children of Vietnam veterans. We have lived this. Keep in mind that 2.8 million men served in Vietnam, and only one birth defect is covered, while 8,000 women served in Vietnam, and they have 18-plus birth defects covered if you're the child of a female Vietnam veteran. So, you can ask why, or the mindset of our legislators or our representatives, but it comes down to one word, and that's cha-ching, or that's two words technically, but it's an issue about money. And just like with the veterans' illnesses, only one new illness gets on that list of presumed exposure and approval for disability rating, once every 2 years. So we have a long fight in front of us to get even those 18-plus birth defects from the female Vietnam veterans' kids approved on the male side.
Kelly, give us your website address.
www.C.O.V.V.H.A. Charlie Oscar Victor Victor House Alpha.net.
Okay, and that stands for Children of Vietnam Veterans Health Alliance, right?
Correct.
Okay. So again, folks, www.C.O.V. as in Victor, V as in Victor, H.A. as in Adam, and is it .org?
It's .net.
.net, okay. And we will be placing this in our blog. It is already on our Facebook page, but we'll put another post there so in case that other one got so buried. But we'll definitely have this in our blog as well. Now, what can you do, Kelly, with the legislators? Have you had any success in having some at least good conversations with them?
In the last 5 years, we've seen an unprecedented amount of legislation concerning children of Vietnam veterans introduced. The legislation generally fails. Now, I don't want you to think that because the legislation fails or because it doesn't get past the introduction, it's a bad thing. It's actually a good thing that at least we have a starting point to work with. So it gives C.O.V.H.A. the ability to be able to at least sit down one day with our legislators and say, you know, we've seen this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill, and this bill. Let's build a groundwork from what you've already presented, and we are then going to have the exact tools we need basically to rewrite the legislation and reintroduce it, because it's not going to be a senator or a congressman who's wording it. It's actually going to be us, the Cubs.
Thank goodness for that, because otherwise they're going to have funding for fried pickles and who else knows what they put in there. So
Right.
Now, how did you come about putting together this organization? I mean, I know that's a lot of work, and then to get the word out to people that you were there and they could come to you, and that's a tremendous amount of work.
Well, after years of activism work for other organizations and independently, Heather and I both realized that there was actually no organization that we're verified as a state nonprofit. We're waiting on our federal 501c3 paperwork to come back approved. There are no nonprofits that are actually for children of Vietnam veterans being run by children of Vietnam veterans. It's not the government. It's, not to say that there's anything wrong with the wives, the widows, or the Vietnam veterans themselves running the organizations, but who knows better than C.O.V.H.A., Children of Vietnam Veterans, but C.O.V.H.A. No one knows better than us what it's like.
Absolutely. When you are the people who are going to bring the documentation. If you said, hey, we need help, and you left it up to the legislators, you'd never see it. I'm pretty certain it would be, I must refrain from making a comment here. Now, Monsanto.
I just want to expand on that, too, that, while many people say, I don't look sick, another reason that Heather and I came together, we joke, we call each other inside out. All of my illnesses are on the outside, but if you look at the devastation in Vietnam and the birth defects there, they are very similar to Heather's, actually. Now, she was born without her right leg below the knee, several fingers, and several toes that were webbed. So she's actually had a prosthetic since the day she could walk, basically. And, that's very important for the United States to realize, and the citizens of this country to realize, that if Vietnam doesn't get help in the illnesses that we show here, they're the primary showing the same illnesses. So another reason that we were so staunch on founding C.O.V.H.A. the way we did is also for international awareness. Believe me, I actually used to be of the mindset, take care of our own first. And it was actually from working with Heather that I learned, well, wait a minute, we're not going to get any help if the Vietnamese don't get help as well. So she really is our international go-to person. And, this is how fast we work. Last week, out of the blue, she was invited to return to Japan after being there just over a year ago, because so many things are happening with Okinawa, showing that Agent Orange drums were buried and also stored on that island. This is a week ago she gets the invitation, okay? This is for November. This is a month and a half away that she'll be traveling to Japan for C.O.V.H.A.
Kelly, I don't know if you're close to having a pretty accurate fix, but what kind of numbers do you have for children of Vietnam vets who are in this predicament here in the U.S. and globally? I mean, what kind of information do you have on that?
Well, if you think about 2.8 million men serving in Vietnam, what I like to do is take those statistics and say, what if only half of them had a child? And I keep knocking it down and knocking it down and knocking it down. So you have, let's say, 1.4 who had a child. Well, let's say that only half of 1.4 million Vietnam veterans had a child. I mean, do you see, like, okay, so maybe 600 to 800,000 children of Vietnam veterans are in this country. Well, what if only half of them have a birth defect? See, the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands in this country. You don't want to know the numbers for the Vietnamese. It's genocide.
Oh, it's got to be horrifying when you think about the huge percentages of the soil that receive those the spraying and so on. What can we do to help with the awareness so that more people will be aware of what it is that you all are going through, and for people to have a place to go where they can learn how to help, what they can do to help?
We have two very important tools for anyone to use. You don't have to be exposed to Vietnam veteran or to Agent Orange or the child of a Vietnam veteran to go to our website and to click on that doctor's note and flyer page, print out our flyer, and hang them in your supermarkets. They have the tabs that can be taken down so that anyone can see them. The biggest way we are raising awareness right now is by partnering with March Against Monsanto. Monsanto was the leading chemical manufacturer of Agent Orange for probably 6 to 7 years, and during that time, they made their compound of Agent Orange 1,000 times greater than the other 7 chemical companies. We're talking about Dow, DuPont, etc. So March Against Monsanto was born from a mom who basically a year ago said, I don't want Monsanto in my children's lives, her 2 little girls, because what they're doing now is making our food. They are making the food supply of the United States of America in labs, and they are also dispersing it globally. These are called genetically modified organisms. So the founder of March Against Monsanto decided no more. And her name is Tammy. She, not even a year ago, decided to organize the March Against Monsanto in May, last May, I guess 2013. It hasn't even been 6 months. 500 cities globally participated. We are now coming up against our second March Against Monsanto. It is on October 12th. And what we have been able to do is ask that all of the local city organizers request Agent Orange speakers. So we are now giving our members unprecedented ability to speak to the public about Agent Orange at these March Against Monsanto events. So I spoke in Philadelphia in May. I'll be speaking again in Philadelphia. In May, Heather spoke at Akron. This year, she'll be speaking in Pittsburgh. We have cities filled in Tucson, San Diego, Denver, Hartford, Naples, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Rockford, St. Louis, the headquarters of Monsanto, Kansas City, Princeton, Charlotte, Columbus, Coos Bay, Lancaster, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Austin, Salt Lake City, Madison. This has never happened before in the history of Agent Orange advocacy, awareness, and activism, that on the same day, so many children of Vietnam veterans, and their spouses have the opportunity to speak publicly.
That is so fantastic. And And I was looking, because I did see some of the cities listed. Is there, and I'm trying to remember, I should have looked at your site again this morning before we went on the air to refresh my memory, but is there a page on your website that does just list events where you're going to be talking?
There is a page. If you go to the Agent Orange and GMO news page, what the list is actually is the cities that we were still requesting. I can update that with the cities that will be speaking. If you all will allow me a couple of hours, I can update that. And if you go to march-against-monsanto.com and click on their events tab, you will see the cities that are participating globally. Right now, at just under 3 weeks away from the march, we have 314 cities participating globally. So there could be a city near you that you can attend, and if you want to advocate, you can print our flyers and bring them there as well.
And give us that address again. That was
march-against-monsanto.com.
All right. And I'm going
to be linking our websites together. I've just been so busy I haven't had the chance. But we're also on Facebook as well.
Yes, and I have that. I'm going to put all this information in our blog. I'll just do kind of a summary, and so to make sure that everybody does have the accesses to your different sites. Kelly, I feel like we could probably talk on and on full of questions. Would you come back and visit with us again and let us learn some more?
Absolutely, and I'd love to have Heather on with me as well. She's a wealth of information for the international community.
That would be perfect.
Also, just a quick note, I will actually be participating on the Vietnam Veterans America town hall meeting at Westchester University next Tuesday, if anyone's in the area and would like to attend.
Okay. Now, do you have a post about that on your Facebook page?
Yes, there is. It's from last week, so I will update that. And also, we have I just got a note in that I forgot San Diego. We have one of our directors, Tanya Mack, who actually was the person who testified for C.O.V.V.H.A on behalf of our IOM submission. She's actually going to be speaking in San Diego on October 12th, and that will also be a huge march. So I will get all of those cities updated on our website for everyone to check that out too.
Excellent. And then we'll make sure that we mirror your info along with your links on our blog and keep that updated as well. I've got to mention one other thing, and that was I saw some of the cutest clothes with your logo on them. Mm-hmm. And where are those? Did you design those?
I did design them. I sat in a cafe with the owner of Red Zone Graphic Embroidery, who does all of our screen printing and embroidery. And with the help of Heather and our vice president, Karen, and our director, Tanya, we were able to come up with the design and the R2M labels and the AO2Gen labels. And anything that people would like, those samples are on our website and also on the Red Zone Graphic Embroidery page. And the information for contacting to place your order is also available on both of those sites.
Excellent. I love the way you placed the logos down the sleeves and the legs. Just such ideal. I mean, they made them look really sharp and very eye-catching. So we'll also put that information out there. I love the logo AO2Gen, obviously Agent Orange, second generation.
And that's the handle we use for Twitter also is at AO2Jen.
All right. Well, I guess before much longer you'll be putting a 3 in there.
Like I said, we already track the third generation illnesses. What we'll need to put a 3 in all honesty, is having the grandchildren follow in our footsteps, because let's face it, we're not going to be around forever. Our lifespans are cut shorter as the child of a Vietnam veteran as a given. So we really would like some more specific communities to become involved, which is consisting of the grandchildren of Vietnam veterans and also the Amer-Asian community. We have a serious disconnect, and I actually just put an article out last week on all of the GI fathers who were over in Vietnam and conceived a child. Their children are looking for them.
That's right. And let me ask you this. We've heard about the illnesses from the burn pits.
Yes.
Does that also apply?
It's such a sad and difficult topic. What has happened in the wars since, we're talking about the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, Afghanistan and Iraq, burn pits are where our troops are directed to basically burn human waste, burn anything that's classified, and these materials are, sometimes computer parts, sometimes plastic. It creates dioxin, and dioxin, it's Agent Orange. So burn pits are now using the term the new Agent Orange. It's a new issue, but it's not a new issue. And the thing is, there's a lot of animosity in advocacy communities because so many veterans of these wars had to fight for help, and they are getting help. Not to say that they don't deserve it any more or less than we do, but we are truly the forgotten, quote-unquote, survivors.
Absolutely. This has to stop being forgotten. It has to be brought forward, and more people need to hear about it. I know that we've gone over time a little bit, but I just was so fascinated by everything you had to say, and I felt like we were at a bad point to end it just a minute ago. We definitely would love to have you come back, a couple months down the road, whatever is good for you, when you feel like you've got more to talk about. And in the meantime, if I come up with questions, I'll contact you, and we'll just try to keep as much awareness out there as we can.
That would be great. And thank you so much, Judy, for having me on behalf of all of our members, Heather, myself, and C.O.V.V.H.A, and everyone fighting just what's wrong with our country and how we treat our sick and disabled.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I was extremely fortunate. My dad was a fighter pilot. He came home from every war. He didn't have anything like this that he passed on. We were a very lucky family, all things considered. And it truly breaks my heart to see that anybody has to deal with anything like this. So we're here, and we're going to provide all the support that we can.
Thank you, Judy. And just let me say, as always, it's never too late. Welcome home to all the Vietnam veterans. Thank you for all of our troops who are serving right now as well.
I so agree. The words thank you will never really be big enough, but they're what we have for now. So again, I echo Kelly when we say thank you to you all. God bless you. Kelly, thank you again so much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you take care. We'll be in touch, and we'll look forward to your next visit.
Absolutely. Talk to you then.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take an identification break for Stardust Radio Network, Inc., and then we'll be right back.
SRN 1690 AM, Riverside, Iowa, and around the world on the Stardust Radio Network. www.stardustradio.com.
You are forever heroes. We won't forget. We know the sacrifice you made. Forever heroes. God bless and keep you.
But we'll have to wait. No, it won't be.